Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Velo Podcast. My name is Mike Levy, and I am coming at you from an undisclosed location where Velo is holding its very first field test. And that is especially relevant to today's podcast topic because we're here testing a bunch of brand new all-road bikes. And I just want to know, what the heck is an all-road bike? Aren't all these road bikes meant for riding on the roads? What makes a regular road bike different than these so-called all-road bikes? And I don't know, maybe more of us, or maybe even all of us, should be ditching our speedy bikes for something a little more forgiving. But I think Josh is going to disagree with me. Josh, we're going to get there. Don't say anything yet. Before we jump into the main topic, though, we got some news to talk about, guys. And the very first thing, Josh, you had some tech from Omloop. The Lidl-Trek bikes had SRAM Red Explorer drivetrain 1x13s on it. Can you tell me about what's going on there? Looked like a mountain bike setup.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing with the 1x13. It's borrowed from mountain bike technology. But really what it is it's just Explorer, and then they've added an extra gear at the top. So you've got your same Explorer gearing, and then there's one more. So you have this wider range. And they decided to run that for the race. And I think it's maybe more about, like, the 1x13 allows it to work because there's enough gearing and there's all this range. But I feel like a big thing, if I was making those decisions, I'd be like, well, this derailleur you can crash and it will probably still work and you can keep racing. And I feel like that is as much a part of the calculation as anything else. And also the chain's not going to come off because there's like a crazy strong clutch. And I don't know. It makes a lot of sense to me that they would do that.
So gearing wise, in your article, you said these guys are running a 54 front ring with a 10-46 cassette. And I know when I look at that big spread at the back, I automatically think, pretty easy gearing. You see that big cog at the back, obviously not paired with a 54. But one thing I also think of is big jumps in between the cogs, which is not something that road riders and especially racers are typically huge fans of.
It's true. And I remember riding 1x11 and finding it annoying, like constantly annoying that there wasn't, like, you're never in the right gear. But then as soon as you go to 1x12, for me, that mostly disappears. And I know I'm not an elite racer, but, like, I feel like it's fine. And then, the 13 really just expands the spread and keeps the jumps pretty much the same. So what we're really talking about is the Explorer gearing. Is there enough, like, is it tight enough to run on the road? And I would say yes, and I do often. I guess, if you're super sensitive to not having exactly the right cadence, then it is what it is. But what do you think, Alvin?
Yeah, I haven't ridden new, like, Explorer 13 speed stuff, but I was one of the early adopters in the US of Campy Eccar, like the 13 speed group. And the big thing for me, like, I was a big 1x, like, doubter, specifically with 11 speed. But I really believed in it because he could get a 1044 cassette in the first 6 teeth. The 10 to like 17 or something, 10 to 16 was a 1-tooth jump across the range. So when you're on the road where those bigger jumps, like, are more abrupt, like, you have 1-tooth jumps instead. 1046, if I remember correctly, I think it's like the first 4 cogs are 1-tooth jumps. So for the pros who are often in that situation when they're trying to sprint or something like that, or maintain proper cadence,
spending more time down there, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they're there. And I think that makes sense. That this is the first time where I think, like, okay, because I have been predicting in my, like, trends for 2025, I've been predicting for years we're going to see more 1x on the road. And finally, this is a cassette that I think is realistic from a brand that people trust and are willing to adopt.
I just looked it up. The first 4 on the bottom are 1-tooth jumps. And then you go from a 13 to a 15 to a 17 to a 19 to a 21. So you've got 2-tooth jumps. And then it starts to get a little wider after that.
Which, frankly, that sounds like an 11-speed Shimano cassette at that point. Like an 11 to 30, that's kind of the jumps there. There's no 16 tooth that people love.
Did you just imply that Campagnolo isn't a brand that people will trust?
Ouch. I'm as big a campy believer as everyone else. How dare you?
Coming back. They're coming back.
They're coming back. That being said, like, I don't think people were...
I don't think trust is the right word.
Yeah, I don't know if trust is the right word, unfortunately. I tried my best when I worked in bike shops to put campy Ekar in front of everybody who it would apply to, who I thought like could take advantage of it. And more often than not, they're going SRAM, be it 11 speed or Shimano 11 speed, and then later 12 speed SRAM.
I have a question about this gearing setup. This is obviously very course specific, isn't it? Like there are one-day races, there's classics where they're not going to be running the same team, the same riders will be running a front derailleur, I assume, Josh. Like they're not going to run this throughout a whole bunch of races.
I mean, we don't know. We have no idea, but I suspect that they will move around. To be honest, there's a lot of like people forget that World Tour level racers are like regular people. And just like all the people listening, they're like, I don't want to run 1x13 on the road. So there's some of that going on. And they did get to choose this time, but...
Yeah. I would caveat that with they're so strong that if it does end up with a narrower or like a more precise range, I guess you could say, like they're strong enough to deal with those sorts of things where like I have a 1x12 setup, a mullet setup on my bike, and like, you know, I should probably have a front derailleur to be honest. There are times where I wish
not by
wish
how
I
you're
had
treating that drivetrain as we're seeing.
It's a little tired.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, so that mullet, those bigger, I could look it up, but there's bigger jumps in that than there are in the the Explorer range.
In the 10 to 52, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. If I had to guess for like later classics, especially the Tour of Flanders, which just has so many of these cobble climbs, some of them hitting like 20%, I don't think you're going to, at the very least, they're going to swap out the 54 for a slightly smaller chainring would be my guess if they keep that 10 to 46. But maybe I'm just, I'm not Vanderpool. I don't know if I can put up the watts to do that.
Yeah, when I said they're regular people, I just meant in terms of like they have superstitions just like all the rest of everyone else.
Yeah, I do think historically Omloop more often than not is a place where teams are willing to kind of experiment a little bit. Like there's
a little more forgiving with that,
I suppose. Yeah. And so I don't know. I would be personally surprised to see like Lidl-Trek
there's less at stake to
us.
lose. Like if you mess up at Omloop with the tech, it's like not the same as Flanders.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly
now there was another piece of tech that was spotted also at Omloop. There was the 1x13 by Lidl-Trek, and then other Zipp sponsored teams, including I think we saw it on Tom Pittock's bike, had a new wheel that we don't really know anything about, and it had an integrated pressure sensor on it, basically replacing the tire whiz that you can buy separately right now. Well, maybe not replacing, but like offering an option where you don't have this weird appendage on there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The tire whiz thing. So for people that aren't familiar with the tire whiz, it's basically like a real-time tire pressure monitor that you can pair with your computer, and it will warn you if your pressure starts to go down. You could, which is super important if you're doing these races. It's an interesting thing anyway. But the problem was it was first made for mountain bikers, and it was like this big, guys, I would sort of describe it as like a big lollipop on the end of the valve stem, just like swinging through the air on the outside of your rim. And there are all sorts of reasons, obvious reasons, why that is not desirable. Josh, what is this new tire whiz, if that's what they're calling it? What does it look like?
So, well, first of all, there is a tire whiz 2.0, which they moved where they took that lollipop and they basically put it against the wheel. And now, let's call this tire whiz 3.0, where they just put it inside the wheel, basically. When you look at it from the outside, you can see that there's a removable, like there's a spot where this thing obviously pops out. but from the outside of the wheel, it just looks like a regular wheel.
As a racer, pretending for a second that I'm a racer, I might not want something like that on the end of, on the outside of my rim. It's not on the outside of the rim, but it's on the rim, which means it's rotating weight that it's added. There's a battery in there. We're not talking much weight, but on one hand, I'm sort of surprised to see this being used by people who might be winning these races. They're running that on the rim. Can you tell me the advantages, why they would be rocking that?
So that's an interesting question, because for people at home, I mean, I think that there's a great advantage, especially for like a gravel bike, where I don't really use it to, like, if you lose pressure, you generally know, and like whatever. But if let's say you go from the road and then you want to let out a little bit of pressure, and well, now you can see exactly when you do it, how much you're letting out. And if you get a flat, or later, even if you don't get a flat and you just want to pump your tire back up when you get back on the road, well, now you know exactly what your pressure is all the time. And that's really nice. In a race, I don't know what they're going to really do other than, I guess, just know that the pressure is perfect.
So I want to say, like, shout out to our colleague Jessie May Morgan, who did a patent story on this in November. But in the patent, there's one thing that I remember, and I pulled it up, but the quote is, the sensor device that's built into the rim may, for example, measure tire pressure data, wheel speed data, wheel odometer data related to rim composite health, wheel lean, and yaw data. And I think the rim composite stuff is pretty interesting. They would do it via a node in the rim, which, is that useful for the average person? No, but I think it's another data point that can be useful.
So picture this scenario. You've got your team of riders. They're out there. They're killing it. You're in your team car or your crazy tech van, and you are live monitoring your rider's tire pressure. So you could see when so-and-so's bike, the tire pressure drops 5 psi before the rider even knows it. Rider can boom, get out of the peloton, put his hand up. It might mean that they get repairs fixed faster. Now, obviously the team monitoring it, I don't think that is happening, but the rider itself, I don't think that's allowed, but the rider itself, maybe they have something on their computer screen, their head unit, it comes up, you've lost 2 psi and his screen flashes red or something.
I think you're onto something there. Any extra data point you can get is useful in this situation. If you are planning to go on the attack and you realize, oh, my tire is getting low, better get a new bike now, hold off a second, get back in, and then launch your attack when you have the equipment that's fresh. And you don't want to get in, put all this effort in, get into the break, and then it's immediately gone away because you get a flat.
Yeah, I don't know how realistic that is, but I think it's kind of neat.
I mean, again, it's probably not realistic, but it might happen. Yeah. And or you could be in the break and you realize, okay, I feel like my tire is getting, but we've all felt it, my tire is getting a little bit lower, but you can't tell how much lower it's gotten. So you're trying to tell yourself, okay, can I keep riding this, or do I need to get a replacement? And that will tell you that.
Yep. Recently, what time trial was it in? Remco thought he had a rear flat tire and he stopped pedaling for 10, 15 seconds, and he was kind of hopping and looking back at his rear tire. This was not too long ago. So if he had the sensor, maybe he could, select a screen.
That would be a perfect use for this.
Yeah, look at that.
I should say we don't know all these answers because while SRAM was very happy to talk about Explore being used, they had no comment about the unreleased wheels, and there were tape over them. And
yeah. Okay, guys, we've got one more piece of tech. Will, there is something on the Velo homepage right now about a breathing sensor. It's another day, another new training tool being used by the pros. What is this thing? How does it help them? What does it do? And why is it questionable?
Yeah, breathing sensor. Shout out to Jim Cotton, who did all the research for the story and wrote this great story that's on the homepage right now. It is being touted as like the next breakthrough in training data up there with a power meter, or being called more valuable really than power data even. And it measures real time the volume of oxygen that you are inhaling and exhaling. So it's kind of outside of doing like a VO2 test, which you have to do in a lab essentially. This lets you do that in real time out on the road. So it kind of gives you this extra insight into how your body is actually performing on the road. That is ideally, or like in theory, would be not have as many of these downsides or inconsistencies that a heart rate monitor might have, or these outside variables that can affect heart rate, like caffeine intake and just person to person variability. But yeah, it's a company called Timeware which has brought this to the real world, and they're working with Visma, Lisa Bike, and probably some other teams are using it, but we know for sure they're using it with Visma, Lisa Bike. And yeah, it gives you the real time insight into basically how sustainable an effort you're doing is, so you can know like pretty much if you can keep going at this pace or you need to back off a little bit.
Will,
yeah.
Hold on. I have questions for you here.
Yeah.
What is it measuring? Like, it looks like it's a strap that you put around your body. You could see it. If you guys go to the article, Jim's got photos in there, and you could see it on their backs. It looks like a little circle. Is it measuring, like, does it know when you breathe in and out? Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, so from what I understand, and I'm by no means an expert on this at all, I have simply read Jim's article and done a little bit more research, but...
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. We should have Jim here. But it's a little strap that you would wear like on your chest, similar to like a heart rate monitor strap. And in fact, this company offers, or the product they're going to be offering, includes also a heart rate monitor next to this ventilation monitor. But the ventilation sensor, it apparently uses strain gauges to measure your breathing rate essentially, and how much volume of oxygen, how much volume of air you're pulling in and pushing out. So it's tracking the movement of your chest cavity essentially as you breathe in and out, and from there inferring how much oxygen you're actually intaking. But that's as best I understand. Alvin, do you have anything to add about that?
I think the big thing is that the accuracy that they're touting is like within 96 or 97% of like a proper VO2 max test from here. And if that's the case, that is way better than anything that comes from the heart rate monitor, or a heart rate monitor and a power meter. Of course, this does have to account for power meter, or with a power meter as well. But I think that is pretty cool. And there have been studies about that too, of like the accuracy of like the testing the VT1, VT2, and that type of thing. But I mean, a VO2 max basically is just like, it's testing how much oxygen you can kind of consume, your body can use as you respirate. And so that's supposed to be, as far as I understand, similar to what this is.
Yeah, you hit on a good point there. It's not going to be like a single data point you rely on. It's going to be triangulated with your heart rate monitor, with your power meter, to get you the most up-to-date, most accurate information in real time, which is why exactly the UCI is already deciding to looking into banning it. So that is the latest there.
Wait, why would they be banning it?
They are because they're scared of the future. They're scared of change.
You mentioned, is there a hiccup? Like, do they not? Is it the real time data that they don't like, or?
I couldn't tell you exactly what they're thinking, but it doesn't really make any sense to me, because we already have these things that are heart rate, power meter, that are allowed in competition. But maybe they, in their mind, this new tool is too powerful. It's too accurate, and it's going to make the problem of like. There's been a lot of criticism of pro racing recently that it's, well, maybe not in the last couple of years with Pogacar, but it's been a little bit too robotic, where people just, they know their thresholds, they know their numbers, they know their zones, and they know what they can push, and they just look at the computer, and then they do that, and there's less, it's less art, there's less heart and actual like racing based on feel. So I think maybe they're scared of it worsening that problem, but really in recent years, the racing has still been plenty interesting, and in fact, maybe more interesting than in a long time in cycling.
Yeah. I think this is just to put a period on this. Not many of us are going to go put a mask on and do an actual VO2 test in a lab. Like that's a pretty rare thing for us to do. I think most people don't want to do that. But if someone's already using a heart rate monitor or a power meter, which is, obviously everywhere, this might be a neat way to get most of that kind of data without having to do a horrible VO2 max test in a lab, which nobody wants to do. That's like a punishment. Yeah. Anyways, guys, we're here testing all road bikes. So we got to move on to our main topic. And I need to know basically what the heck is an all road bike? We have these bikes downstairs from 10 feet away. They look like a pretty normal road bike to me. Josh, I'm going to ask you first. What defines an all road bike? And is that a term that you can kind of use? Can you get along with that term? Because I know like in mountain bike land, there's people that invent dumb names for things that probably shouldn't exist. Is it similar with this all road thing? What do you think?
I mean, I'm old, and sometimes I don't like new inventions. It's funny because I'm all about tech, but like in this, I have a little bit of a hard time because really these are endurance bikes. They used to be endurance bikes, but to be fair, there is a little bit of a change here, and the big one is that what we're calling an all-road bike nowadays, it's an endurance bike that has a bunch of tire clearance, sometimes up to 40 millimeters, which like only like a few years ago, that 40 mil was kind of a standard for gravel bikes. So, I mean, all-road maybe is fair. The other things that you find in them are sort of go back to endurance bikes, which is a taller head tube, less reach, so it's shorter, and then the wheelbase is longer. They tend to have a longer chainstay. There's a lot more flex. Like there's a focus on comfortableness often. And yeah, I mean, so all-road endurance, I don't know what you want to call it, but they really do have a lot of capability.
Yeah, I would, the thing that I would say is like all road endurance, whatever you want to call it, I would say it's less a focus on comfort and more so focusing not on being the absolute fastest thing all the time. Like we have so many race bikes out there that are like optimized in one way or another. And these are kind of just optimized for you and me, like for getting out there and riding and enjoying the scenery and enjoying the smells and everything. And they're optimized for the things that make riding, I guess, more comfortable, as you're saying. So like a wider tire, more upright positioning, that type of thing. Handling that doesn't like veer into the middle of the road whenever you're not paying attention,
Just trying to keep it exciting.
I did say earlier, I said, we were chatting and I said that race bikes ask the rider to conform to them. And I think these types of bikes try to match the rider.
Will, would you agree with what Alvin and Josh are describing there? Is that when I say all road, is that what you think of?
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's like a big bike trying to make endurance bikes cool. But that's just my theory.
Yeah. I like it.
I'm
That's
with
good.
you.
But yeah, I mean, going back to I don't know, I guess the renaissance of the disc brake in road bikes, which was what now 5-7 years ago, that has really allowed this change for the endurance bike to kind of evolve into what we now call the old road bike, even if maybe it's spiritually a similar thing.
Will, hold on. Is it just tire clearance? Like the moving to disc brakes has allowed the tires, one of the reasons that have allowed the tires to get this big and be this more comfortable?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, the limiting factor in the past was, a rim caliper could only maybe fit over a 30 millimeter tire or 32. I don't know, Alvin, what's the biggest tire you ever tried to fit into a rim brake caliper?
The haters will say like an EE brake will fit a 32 as a rim brake caliper, or like a Paul racer or a Neo racer or something like that will fit a 32 or maybe a 35.
Yeah, but
But
then like you're not shedding any mud if like, if the moment it's maybe a little bit dirt, you're kind of messed up there.
exactly. And then there were also like the direct mount brakes, or the direct like the direct mount brakes that were happening like as disc brakes were starting to come up like 10-ish years ago or less. But like it's not even a 32 mil tire anymore. Like you can fit a 40 in a bunch.
Yeah,
of
I
these
mean
bikes.
that's really the big thing. It's pushed so much beyond that point. But I think there's a second thing too, and that's that race bikes push this big integration, whether it's the headset or putting all the cables inside the bike, so you get this just really sleek looking package. And I think that now these endurance bikes just kind of look dorky. There's really no way around it. They always just look like lame bikes. But when you look at, like, I look at BMC's lineup for instance, I honestly, like, at a glance, I can't tell which one is supposed to be for the World Tour team and which one is supposed to be for the weekend warrior who just likes to go for a long ride.
I want to hit on something quickly before we move on. You guys, or Will, actually, you said that you implied it kind of sounds more like a marketing term. So we're actually here, we're just outside of San Francisco to test these bikes. We go down to the water, like I go down to the water on a sunny Saturday morning, and I will see, like, I sit on a bench there, drink my tea in the morning, drink my Monster, and I see...
That's more like it.
Yeah, let's be honest. And, I see 500 riders pass me in like 10 minutes. So it's insane, the amount of people here on drop bar bikes. I want to say that it looks like, there's a caveat here, but it looks like the very large majority of them are on traditional speedy road bikes. So from your guys' point of view, my question is, Will, first for you, are you seeing tons of riders on all road bikes, or when you go for a group ride or just out riding, do you see people on all road bikes?
I think it partly depends on which group you're going on. If it's a speedy group ride, like, by all means, those people should be on the Dogmas, the Tarmacs of the world, those race bikes. But I think another thing to my point earlier is, if you are just passing a group ride, at a glance, I can't tell like really which version of the bike they're on. Like they have become a little bit more one and the same with at least from like the profile, at a glance, they look kind of similar to the road bikes in my eye. They're the race
more
bikes.
covertly endurance.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit more undercover. It's just like a big, I mean, to my mind, I remember like the Cannondale Synapse always looked frankly terrible. The old Roubaix with the like inserts in the
Zert.
Yeah, the Zert's inserts in the, what was it, in the seat stays.
Yeah.
There was all these like gimmicks. There's all these things that just like weren't great. And like now, frankly, the bigger tires just add so much more comfort to these bikes anyway. You don't need any of those gimmicks, and you can make the bikes look good.
Yeah. Alvin, in your riding friend group, are people still buying traditional freaking all-out speed bikes?
I mean, I am a part of, shout out the group chat, East Bay Tarmac Owners Association, and most people have a specialized tarmac in it.
So hold on,
I'm
hold
maybe
on.
not the best person to ask there, but
When I'm down at the water, Alvin, I just want to paint the picture for the people here. And those 500 cyclists go by, 437 of them are on S-Works something or others, tarmacs.
That's why they're easy to hate, but they're really good bikes.
yeah,
Okay,
unfortunately.
Alvin, go on.
Yeah. So to answer the question, like, I do think people lean towards the speedy race bikes, and I think that's partially because it looks cool. Those are the bikes that are being raced by the pros, and you kind of want the right tool for the job a little bit. Like when someone might see like a Porsche touring car out there, and then they'll go buy a 20-year-old base model 911 Carrera because it gives them kind of the same fizz. And I think that's a similar thing here. But I should mention, like, we do, I think, as media, because big bicycle will push, like, has a tendency to push, like, the race bikes or that type of thing. I do think that we do have, like, we as media kind of need to push a bit of a narrative that there are bikes that adapt to us, and they're these bikes, these endurance bikes, these all-road bikes or whatever, or just, as I would like to call them, just road bikes is what these are.
I would agree with that. Personally, I love cosplaying as a racer, It's
Yeah, it's fun.
It's fun.
Phil Guyman said that, right? I love it. I love that phrasing.
Yeah. I have something for you guys. Will and Elvin, we both know somebody who loves speedy road bikes. He wants his stem dropped. He takes all his spacers out. He might even remove his headset top cap to get all the way down there. And he prefers road bikes, normal road bikes. Josh, what are people losing if they choose an all-road bike? What is the drawback to these things, and are they actually any slower?
So I don't think
it's Josh, by the way, everybody.
I don't think you painted that picture exactly, which is, yes, I ride race bikes and I ride them with no spacers. And part of the reason I do that is because I feel like it allows me to really test what the designers, like the way they design that bike. If you take an Aero road bike and you put a stack of spacers on it, is that really testing the way it is? But also, come on, I just like do some stretching and then it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. But to answer your question, are you really losing something? Well, that is a little tricky because I don't think that you are, honestly. And I'm certainly not the fastest out there. It's not like because I have a fancy fast race bike, I'm super fast. It's not like that. There are things that I like about it. I like the feeling, like there is a feeling that you get, like a directness that you get from a race bike that I love it. And I should say, I don't even race, but I just love the feeling of those race bikes. And I am fine riding, 100 to 200 miles on a race bike. And that works for me. But if you're like, you know what, that doesn't work for you, I really don't think you're losing really anything. You're never gonna, no one at our level or even higher than that, like on the non-pro level, no one's going to be like, well, I lost because I had an endurance bike or an all-road bike or whatever. It's just not happening.
I got some more questions for you though, because there are definitely some, they're not even subtle in the road bike world. They're definitely not subtle. There's differences in chainstay length and bottom bracket drop and stack. So you and I and Elvin, we were out on a ride a couple days ago, and you were on one of our all-road test bikes, and it definitely handled different. So
yeah.
not necessarily worse, but can you just break down, different in the same way, like if we were talking about mountain bikes, like an enduro bike handles different than a trail bike for a very good reason. So an endurance bike, it requires a different, approach through the corners and stuff sometimes, I imagine.
Yeah, so one thing that I'm finding as we're doing this testing is that I don't like to lean a bike. I'm not a great descender, and I really don't like leaning, like really like leaning into the corner, right? Which is why I don't descend that quickly. I like to use the brakes, and then I like to turn the bike more. And an all-road bike, they're longer and their steering is less like immediate and direct like that. And I find myself overshooting a little bit, even though like I'm not going that fast, and I'm not like it took me a little bit to be like, wait, what is happening here? Because I'm not a great descender, so shouldn't this work really well for me? But I think I actually am used to a really direct bike that I can turn.
Okay.
Turn with
that
your
makes
hands
sense.
as opposed to turn with your hips.
Yeah, exactly.
Type thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I wonder if over time, like if you got on an all-road bike, I mean, we're going to find out, and rode it for a while, I wonder if, after a few weeks of riding, if you would feel more confident on an all-road bike on like these descents. To be honest, dude, like some of these descents, they're tricky. They're tight. There's tight corners of like a changing radius. Everything is blind. The surface is changing. So like they're fairly technical roads. And you guys did a loop today on these things, and that was a fairly technical loop. Will and Elvin, would you, if you're going to go out and buy a road bike, Elvin, are you buying an all-road bike? Are you buying a speed bike?
I'm buying a speed bike, but that's because I am doing little bike races here and there. And so I want kind of that quicker turn in and that type of thing. And I want to optimize for that. That being said, I have really enjoyed the bikes that I've ridden so far. And just for the simple pleasure of like getting out and riding and enjoying y'all's company and that type of thing, these things have been phenomenal. I think it's going to take a little bit more time for me to decide, is it just that, or is it the 32 mil tires that we're riding across the bikes? Because that has been pretty sweet too. But yeah, I would, if I wasn't committed to like doing my little like road races and crits this year, I would look hard at an all-road bike. And I think I should, because I should put my money where my mouth is.
Okay. We'll come back to that in a few months. We'll see what you're riding. Will, I know you like your classic looking bikes with your skinny little tires and all that. Are you going to be convinced by these all-road bikes or what?
It's like yes and no, but I can't get past. I love descending, and I just love that direct input on the roads around here on like the kind of technical descents, and I just have I think more fun when I can just really rail these corners, and you lose a little bit of the edge with these kind of longer all-around bikes.
You were hustling pretty hard today, though, I thought, like on the descents.
I was still hustling, but like I feel like I was like just like missing something. It just felt a little bit muted. I don't know, can't explain it. And then going uphill, I'm not like in really great climbing shape at the moment, but like when I am in like really great climbing shape, I feel like there's just the extra like edge you can get from that direct input. But it's just like it's really, I think that's a big part of it. Like outside of descending, if I'm not super fit, I don't think I'm getting like what the race bike is offering as much.
Okay, wait, hold on here, everybody. Everybody knows that I'm all about the race bikes.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to ask you.
You guys are like, oh, nobody needs an endurance, or nobody needs a race bike. Everybody should be on endurance bikes. And then you guys are both telling us why you don't like endurance bikes or all road bikes.
Let me say, like, I have a road bike for a specific need, I will say. Like, but that being said, like the things that I really like about, like, that I want in a bike more often than not are in these all-road bikes. Like, I want a bike with like slightly longer wheelbase than what's on a race bike. Ideally, I want the slightly lower bottom bracket. I want the slightly like higher bits of trail, just because I want a bike that I can kind of like turn with my hips a little bit more, because I think that is ultimately like that's a safer ride. That's kind of me.
Yeah, okay, but I'm gonna hold on
here.
The
thing that I will say is that I think the trouble, and I think there are a couple of these all-road bikes that kind of match this, but ideally I would have a bike with that geometry that is lightweight like those race bikes. And that's hard to find right now.
That brings me to Josh, because what I was going to ask Josh, I'm not going to ask you if you're buying an all-road bike or a speed bike, because you're buying a speed bike. But is there a world where you buy a fast road bike and it has tire clearance plenty of tire clearance for 32 mil tires, and that is your bike? That makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, so like my favorite bike is the NV Melee. That's my I have a few bikes. That is the bike. And that will run 35. When it launched, Alexei Vermillion won a gravel race, BWR on it, with 38s.
Yeah, they were tight. But
they were tight. They were not allowed. They do not recommend running 38s. Official clearance is 35, but it still happened.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what you would do then, eh, Josh?
I mean, I run 28s, but I will tell you, I am thinking
I thought you ran 23s, to be honest.
Maybe I should move to 30, because the Scott Addict comes with the 30. And I was like, well, this is pretty sweet.
I'm probably moving to 32 after this field test. So
yeah, I'm blowing the 32s.
Yeah, I'm sticking with 28s, but I might think about moving to 38 to
I'm gonna go
30
back
in
to
the
my
future.
28s and feel like I'm on 23s, like after these 32s.
Yeah. Josh,
Okay, but I
2021
want to
called.
back
They
up
want
one
their
second
they
here,
want their rim
Alvin,
brakes back. Okay.
and say I want to dial it back. You're gonna do crit races. Do you think it's a win-loss because of an all-road bike that you're on?
It's a win-loss if I can't pedal through a corner when I want to.
Do you think that you can't find an all-road bike that would do that?
It would take away one of the key things that I like about an all-road bike, which is the lower bottom bracket.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair.
Like this is like another thing, but like the advent of like shorter cranks helps with the lower bottom bracket thing. I think a decent bit. So I can, instead of the 170s, 170 mil cranks that usually come on bikes of my size, I can run a 160 or a 155 maybe. And then I can also lower the bike's bottom bracket and get my center of gravity a little bit lower and that type of thing, and still ideally have some of that pedaling clearance. Yeah, I don't know. I have seen people race like semi-professionally race endurance bikes, and that's possible. But if I have the choice between the more perfected tool for the job or a really good tool for the job, I'm going to choose the former.
All right, so what I'm getting through, one of the reason I'm asking all this question is because I'm the race bike guy, and I'm like, can we just stop telling people that they should have all road bikes? Race bikes are more fun. Just like get the race bike.
I mean, I think it comes down to, you'll know if you want a race bike. Like, if you want a race bike, you'll know it, and chances are you'll be able to figure out the fit. Like, I don't think, like your suggestion of like, oh, I'll just stretch and figure it out, I don't think that's the right advice for people.
Let me be very clear. That's terrible advice. Do not follow that advice.
Okay.
Yeah. And just for the record, like all the pros now, like you'll see so many spacers at a World Tour race.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah. All over the place, not just on road bikes. But yeah, I mean, if you're unsure of what kind of bike to get or what kind of bike you want, chances are you should be on one of these road bikes that we're on.
All right, guys, before we get out of here, I'm going to ask you to make a prediction. 5 years from now, do you think that we see the majority of people riding these so-called all-road bikes, endurance bikes? Maybe they're called something else then, but are we going to see, the large majority of people on these bikes, or are we still going to see, most people on race bikes, even that aren't doing a ton of racing? Alvin, tell me what you think.
People are still going to be on race bikes. That's it. That's it, unfortunately. Like, I think there is an unfortunate branding to endurance bikes. And I think, I think it kind of comes down partially to us, where we have to push. I still feel like, despite everything we've talked about, like, if someone is unsure what kind of bike to get, they should be on a standard road bike, which is what I consider to be the all-road bikes we're riding right now. So I would love to see more people on these bikes so they can ride more comfortably, longer distances, and feel like on a safer overall bike, safer handling bike. But I would not bet my money on it, unfortunately.
Josh, what do you think?
Absolutely not. They're going to be on race bikes, because this is the thing. The whole thing, the industry revolves around race on Sunday, sell on Monday, although it's Saturday, but you get the point. Like, that's what drives the industry. And so the idea that we're going to switch to, there are some brands that very specifically market to, like, we don't race on Saturday and we are selling you bikes for you. They're always going to be secondary bikes, as long as World Tour racing is what people think about with bikes, because that's just how brands sell.
Okay. William, tell me about the future.
The future. Well, currently, I meet a lot of people who are in their mid to late 20s who are, I would say, athletic, have like a running background or some other athletic background. They're looking to get into cycling, and almost inevitably they get a gravel bike. And often I steer those people towards a gravel bike. And I think it's because of A, the versatility, and B, the kind of more forgiving handling that most gravel bikes will have, compared to, like, you don't want to start someone off on a racy road bike.
90-degree head angle.
What's that?
With the 90-degree head angle.
90-degree angle. Yeah, it's not a good look to start someone. It's not a good way to get someone to fall in love with cycling. But I think that, you know, as these all-road bikes do essentially what gravel bikes of a couple of years ago can do, as like they continue to evolve, they have clearance for 40 millimeter tires. I think they will end up being able to do, for a lot of people who aren't, you know, make their whole identity around cycling, for people who still enjoy to go ride a bike maybe once a week, once a month, and have a road bike.
Normal humans,
which I think is like a big segment of people who like dabble in a lot of different sports and aren't just like, you know, hardcore like cyclists. That's the bike they're going to be steered towards, is the all-road. So I think that it's for those people too.
Will, I think that's a great point, and I wholly wish that I had said that, and it makes me think I should ride the gravel bike we have here tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you should. Let's go for a gravel ride.
That
Screw
I
it.
had said that, but I do love that point, and it's speaking to like such an important percentage of the people who are on bikes, and I think it's just really smart.
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw my prediction into the future here, but I just want to put an asterisk beside it to say that, like, I don't know as much as these guys. I'm looking in from the outside, but what I have seen is pro racers running bigger and bigger and bigger tires. We've seen their stack heights go up and up and up. We've seen them realize that comfort equals speed in a lot of situations, not all the time. Now, obviously, these guys, they're not looking for like a long and relaxed bike. You know, they're doing a very specialized thing. But Josh, you made a good point about the race. You know, you race it and then the company sells it. And I'm going to agree with you, but only halfway, is because I do think that these companies are going to, you know, the pro racers are going higher and higher, and they're using bigger tires. And I think that's going to bleed over. And I know they're not on all road bikes or endurance bikes. I know that. But I do think that it makes so much sense. And if those guys are getting bigger tires, look at the trend. I think that everyone is going to be on bigger tires 5 years from now. I think it's going to make much more sense. Yeah. That's my prediction. We'll see what happens anyway.
That's a good prediction.
All right. We're going to wrap it up here. Guys, this has been a lot of fun talking about all-road bikes. And for everybody listening, we are at Velo's first all-road field test, where Will, Alvin, and Josh, they're testing these new all-road bikes back to back to back to back to find out how different they are, how they perform, and how they perform compared to a gravel bike, compared to a road bike as well too. So stay tuned for a whole bunch of videos from our field test and more podcasts from here as well. And if you guys have any questions about all-road bikes or any other tech questions, leave them in the feed on Velo or comment on the YouTube channel. See you next episode.